So, Jenny, I really appreciate you being a part of this interview. As you know, the Wellness Moonshot is an enormous, audacious goal and a real massive undertaking around the world to create a world free of preventable disease and to promote true vitality around the world. This month and every month, we focus on a particular topic. This month, we're focusing on the topic of begin. So it's an interesting word because it can mean so many things. In our context, I think of begin as a great place for everyone to start when it comes to their own wellness is nutrition and healthy food. So, given your role at the Good Food Fund, really creating a sustainable food system in China, and kind of your massive expertise around food, I wanted to ask you a few questions about food and nutrition and how we can promote healthy food for everybody.
Thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me. What a pleasure to be on this program. And you know, to be honest, you guys are doing going for such a noble mission. I think wellness is so important for everything. Even for world peace. If we have that positive energy towards life, we will have positive energy towards the whole world.
I 180% agree with, with you on that. So, first question then, what to you is a healthy relationship to food? I know that can be a very deep question, and we can take it at any level you want to. But I'm just as a place to start the conversation. What is a healthy relationship to food?
Yes, sure. I I should say that I really liked our topic of today, begin, because healthy and nourishing food is a starting place for preventing disease and promoting vitality. Um, Yet, if we take one step back, healthy food starts with a healthy relation to food. We can simply look at what we are at now in our world today. We consume the largest amount of food in history, but we couldn't trust the least what we eat.
Hmm.
Humanity as a whole is spending more money trying to lose weight than feeding the hungry. 800 million people around the globe go to bed hungry every day,
Hmm.
while 2 billion people are either obese or overweight.
Hmm.
And if you look around you, we have more recipes, chefs, scientists, nutritionists, and TV programs than ever telling us how to eat, but we still don't know how to eat right.
Hmm.
And we have now sent people to the moon, but still we don't know how to eat right every day. So let's think about this. How come knowing how to eat right is more complex than rocket science?
Hmm.
So tell me, do you think that is healthy? Is
Hmm.
that a healthy relationship to food that humanity is carrying today? So now we are aware of these problems. Then what is a healthy relation to food? Well, at the Good Food Fund, we look at many different things. We look at the food environment people are living in. We look at the healthy relationships people have with people around them, and we look at the inability of people to be able to connect with themselves. So all these things actually affect our relationship to food. Um, in the interest of time, I only want to talk about one of them, mindfulness.
Hmm.
Mindfulness that we carry while we approach our food. So, what is mindfulness? In our definition, mindfulness is the ability to be present, to be able to connect to oneself, to connect to other living beings and the earth and planet Earth, which we call Mother Earth. And that ability to connect, for us, one of the core things we have to carry in that particular ability to connect is to know your limit, to know the limits of what we should ask of the world and how much we can take. That ability to know your limit, I think, has been lost.
Mm,
And for a long time, since I would say the dawn of the Industrial Revolution, because we were simply able to churn out so many material goods to satisfy our desire, and we just get lost of what is the limits of the world and what's the limits of of ourselves.
mhm,
and and also to us, mindfulness, a mindful relationship to food is about counting your blessing.
mm,
If you think about that, what a blessing it is to be able to sit down and have a nourishing meal. Think about how many people around the world cannot do that
mhm,
every day, right? And of course, all the more better if you can do that with your beloved ones.
mhm.
And you can think about that, how many more people couldn't do that every single day. So that whole scenario of being able to know your limits, being able to connect to the larger world, to other living beings, of course, to be able to uh, connect with your beloved ones with food. That is a healthy relationship to food as we understand it today. And I think if we can somehow develop that healthy relationship, a lot of the problems we have today, either physically or mentally or socially, wouldn't even exist.
Mhm, mhm. I really agree, and I love your perspective, and honestly, it's one that I use myself when I think about the definition of well-being. Deep level of well-being is a healthy relationship to yourself, a healthy relationship to others, a healthy relationship to the natural world, and a healthy relationship to something greater than yourself, whether it's a purpose or something transcendent. So I love that you brought that into how this healthy relationship to food and a perspective on that, like the pathway of mindfulness as a doorway in to that healthy relationship, and that path of mindfulness allows us to ask ourselves, what are the limits? What are the constraints? And to really know those. So thank you for taking me through the line of your thinking about a healthy relationship to food, because I totally agree with you. We are at a place in our world where we can create massive technologies, like you said, send a man to the moon, but we haven't figured out how to feed everybody and how to support everyone and having access to good food and having that healthy relationship to food. So just thank you for that. I want to ask you another question then that really just builds on it. What are the greatest challenges and opportunities you're seeing to making sure everyone has access to good food? So I know the work that you're doing with the Good Food Fund is truly massive on its own because it encircles, encompasses all of China. So that's enormous. And now I'm asking you a question that's even bigger than that. All 8 billion of us on the planet, what are the greatest challenges and opportunities you see to making sure everyone has access to good food?
Yeah. Um, well, I can first talk about the challenges we are facing. Um, I think one really acute uh, challenges that we are facing is we are losing ownership of the food we eat. Um, we are losing ownership both as individuals, as communities, and as nations. What do you mean by ownership? Ownership is really know about your food, know where your food is from.
Mm,
That is a very important part of ownership, right? And if you don't even know where food is from, how can you have that or how can you even exercise that ownership of the food that you're eating? And having ownership also means having access to good food, um, having the freedom not to be fed or not to be surrounded by unhealthy food, uh, having the freedom to not to lose the ability to connect to good food.
Mm-hmm.
So that takes us to food environments as we speak. Um, I think one analogy that I always use is a supermarket. Of course, supermarket has played a very important role to bring people to a lot of the materials, things that they need in their daily life. That creates a lot of convenience.
Mm-hmm.
But on the other hand, I think supermarket has served as an analogy of our relations with the world. When you know, think about the moment you walk into a supermarket. I first came to the U.S. in 1998, and I was in a small town in Midwest America, and I came from Beijing. And the first time I walked into a supermarket in America in 1990s, I was so shocked of the amount of material stuff, the stuff that are just right in front of you,
Mm-hmm.
within your reach.
Mm-hmm.
That was like really, really shocking for someone who first came to America in 1990s from China. And the reason I use it as an analogy is that when you walk into the supermarket, if it gives you the feeling that the the resources of the world are infinite,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
The only thing that's finite is your pocket, right? How much money you have. That's the only thing that's finite.
Mm-hmm.
Everything else in the world is infinite because they're just there. All the stuff are just there. I think that's a great analogy to our approach to the world today, because this material world that we create for ourselves give us the illusion that the resources are infinite. Everything is within our reach, and as long as you have the money to afford them. So that actually creates a lot of problems. It changed our relationship to the world. It changed our relationship to ourselves, and also, of course, it creates problems for people who are less fortunate than us. The 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 very reason that this big supermarkets are there, actually they create food deserts for people who are less fortunate, because the whole food supply chain is dominated by the big uh, food uh, industry,
Mm-hmm.
that people in less privileged communities, they don't have access to healthy food. So in summary, the food environments that are surrounding us are one of the biggest challenges we're facing today, uh, when it comes to our access to good food. And also the food environments actually, like supermarket, actually they shape our worldview, and change our relationship to the world. And secondly, how food is produced is actually one of the greatest challenges we are facing today, when it comes to access to good food, because most of our food today is produced in an industrialized way. And so we are not like our ancestors. For our ancestors, food was produced within, let's say, 1 mile or 2 kilometers from your house, and you basically see where your food come from and how food grow. But today, food is grown somewhere else, thousands of miles away, or in ways that you just can't comprehend how they're produced. So today, we don't have that knowledge and experience with food. And if you think about ancestors, how did they learn about food? There was no food literacy class. There was no food education class back then, right? So they learn about food from the elderly in their family or from the elderly in their community, in their village, because those elderlies, they were able to uh, gather enough knowledge and wisdom with the years they live in their lives. But today, simply you live many more years doesn't mean that you know more about food.
Hmm.
Actually, the older you are, the more disadvantaged you are in terms of learning about food, because the industrialization of food has become more and more complex. So people who are older, they tend to be have less kind of ability or technological know-how to know about the food. So these are the challenges we're facing today. Um,
Before you go to opportunities, I just want to kind of emphasize for whoever's listening two things that you said because I think they are so important. And that is this sense of infinite abundance, that we have this mindset that it is just infinite. I love your supermarket analogy because it's very pragmatic. Most people have been in a supermarket. Um, that we have this sense of infinite supply at our disposal. So that's one. And then the second mindset, these are like two mindset shifts we have to make. That one really links to me to what you were saying before about a healthy relationship to food, which is understanding the limits themselves. But in our supermarket, it really is expressed as sort of this infinite possibility, infinite choice. I lived overseas for a few years myself, and when I came back to the US and I went to my first supermarket again because I hadn't been to one in 3 years, I started crying because I was overwhelmed with
right.
all of the choice. And it was very difficult to figure out. I can't even figure out what deodorant I want to buy. I haven't had this choice in 3 years. And not having the choice, having the choice of only one or two things, was actually easier when I was away. So that's just an interesting thought. So one is the abundance. The second is this sense of disconnection that you're describing, that we have a real disconnection from where our food comes from. We're not connected to the earth. We're not connected to the seeds. We're not connected to the animals. We're not connected to the planting, the work that goes into supporting a thriving environment for food to grow, for the kale and the chard and the leeks and the oranges to grow. And so that those two things, this infinite possibility, infinite choice without limit, but also this disconnection, seems to be ways of thinking that are institutionalized within our society and systems. And so I can see how those are enormous challenges. So I wanted to just kind of highlight those because I'd love to hear what opportunities you see as well.
Yeah. I think we are living in a fairly challenging time, but we are also living in a time with a lot of opportunities. And one opportunity that I've seen in the past few years is that people are starting to connecting the dots. Um, People used to, when we talk about food, still today, when I talk about, like in China, 30 years ago, when you talk about environmental conservation, yes, like in China, 30 years ago, if you talk about environmental conservation, people thought you were talking about keeping your city clean, don't litter, don't
Mhm.
spit, things like that. But 30 years later, we all understand what environmental conservation is. It's a systematic thing, it's about a system. It's not just about not littering or not spitting or and not using too much water. It's a whole system,
Mhm.
systemic approach we have to take to environmental conservation. Same with food. We've been working in silos for so long, and even today, if you talk to people that we are doing good food, they thought you were doing things about food security or food safety. And those are the two things that people first think about when you talk about food. They don't. It's so interesting. They don't think about health first. They think
No.
about food safety, food security. Of course, they're related to health,
Yeah.
but this is not exactly what we are talking about today, about well-being of a person. Uh, so, so I think the opportunity we are seeing today is that more and more people are connecting the dots. We are taking a systemic approach to food systems. We are now talking about the food systems. So it's not just about nutrition scientists. It's not just about agriculturists. It's not just about um, people who are policymakers. We're talking about everyone doing their bit and how we connect all the bits together. So that's I think is amazing opportunity that has come up in the last few years. And secondly, we're really excited about the plant-based movement around the world, um, because most of the societies around the world, I would argue, traditionally were predominantly plant-based, follow plant-based diets,
Mhm.
because it simply takes more resources to raise animals, and simply it is less efficient to feed the population with uh, animal based protein. Well, there are exceptions like Mongolia or Tibetan, where they traditionally they have to eat meat for because of the climate reasons. But most societies, we are mostly plant-based. So I think this is another opportunity we are seeing around the world today, that plant-based movement is taking momentum in many parts of the world. And also people are trying to reduce food waste,
Mhm.
and trying to improve how food is produced with different kinds of experiments. So to finish my answer to this question is that when we talk about making sure everyone has access to good food, we have to think about not just our generation. We have to think about we are leaving enough resources. We are leaving enough opportunities for future generations to have access to good food. As we can see today, we are depriving of future generations of that access to
Mhm.
good food with the way how food is produced today, with the way how much meat or other animal protein we're consuming today, and with the 1/3 of the food we're wasting today. So we just have to think about future generations as well when we think about access to good food.
Well, that's another mindset shift. When we add to our list of mindset shifts that we need to be embracing, that's another one to embrace, which is to look at future generations as interactions and decisions today. So, with the idea you mentioned, and I could actually feel your excitement about um, more systemic, more holistic thinking happening within food systems, the plant based movement, and then the ideas of and the practices for really looking at food waste and treating food waste very differently. With kind of building on that momentum, are there one or two innovations that you would say you think hold real promise for kind of the wellness moonshot that we've described, really preventing disease and promoting vitality, whether it's for individuals or for whole populations? Are there some innovations that you'd say, these are things that we need to be paying attention to because they're exciting that they're occurring?
Yeah, I can give you two brief examples of that. One is the really exciting movement we are seeing around the world. It's still not in the mainstream yet, but it's taking momentum. It's gaining momentum. Is chefs? Chefs are now getting more and more active
Mm.
in in providing people with good food. If you think about it, traditionally chefs are people who like hiding somewhere, in the kitchen. Nobody really get to see them, and nobody really know who they are, and then
Yeah.
so they and usually in many societies they actually have a very low social status because they think they're just people who cook, right? But it should be like that. They are they can play a very important role in our society and in really shaping our future. And so that's one really exciting area that I'm thinking I've been seeing is that chefs are taking leadership in shaping our future, in shaping our relationship, healthy relationship with to food. One thing I would like to say is that we always say food is medicine. I would also argue food is a medicine. When you think about the kind of well-being it will provide to us. But I would also argue that food is not medicine. Who would eat medicine every day, right? Like if food is like medicine, nobody's gonna eat it.
Hmm.
So food has to be tasty. Food is not medicine. You take medicine, whatever, whatever taste, because it's good for you. You have to take it to cure whatever disease you're having. But food is not like that. Food is something that you take because you have pleasure taking it. So that sheer pleasure, the sensory pleasure, is very important when it comes to food. So chefs or whoever cooks, it doesn't have to be like professional chef. It can be anyone who cooks at home or cooks for the community, has a very important role to play. They are the ones who can do that magic, right? We all have memories of how mom, when we grew up, how our moms like magically turn something raw into something tasty and on the dinner table. That's like magic to us when we were children. And chefs and family cooks are like that. They are the magic people. They can turn something raw into something tasty. So that's one area I think is very exciting. The chefs are taking leadership in this huge movement towards better food. And second exciting example is also I see in the plant-based movement, people are become are being very innovative when it comes to plant-based food. Because when you think about plant-based food, you feel like, oh, my choice are limited because then I have to, take out so many things from my menu. Of course, when I talk about plant-based food, I do not mean that everybody has to be vegan overnight. That's not what I mean. When we say plant-based food, we mean at least, your dinner table is mostly so plant-based food is like the star of your plate. Um, and people have been very creative and innovative about this because there's hundreds of edible plants around the world, but we've been eating only a very small handful of them. So people are trying to, a lot of people around the world today are trying to discover the huge potentials of plant-based food, like mushrooms and fungi, for example.
Hmm.
And people are being very very innovative when they're using all these new ways of fermentation, for example, using fermentation to create new nutritional profiles for plant-based food. So these are really exciting. I mean, when you're on the right track, what I mean right track is that when you are embracing the plant-based movement, then you become more and more innovative and creative.
Yeah,
That's really exciting.
it's very exciting. As I'm listening to you, I feel like I'm talking to someone who's in my tribe, because these are things that are so important to me too. So I love hearing them from you. I'm wondering, from your leadership of the Good Food Fund in China, are there any is there some wisdom, one or two kernels of wisdom that you feel like you've really learned from the work that you've done in China that you think it'd be worthwhile for the rest of the world to take a look at, to really embrace, because it could be something that all of us could be taking advantage of or gaining, benefiting from?
Mm. We um the Good Food Fund. I founded the Good Food Fund in 2017. So we've been around for 5 years now, 5 6 years now.
Mhm.
Um, I think I have been giving like talks and presentations to people in around the world when there were events on food and food systems. One thing I discovered is that we I would say accidentally, because when we started, we didn't know, we are going which way we should take, and there were so many ways directions we could have taken. We accidentally hit the road. I think is something that's really can be. Uh, can really apply to other parts of the world as well.
Mhm.
uh, we realized, after my presentation, a lot of people like in other parts of Asia or other parts of the world, they actually told me that they also wish that there were a Good Food Fund in their country.
Mm.
Why? Because the Good Food Fund has been serving as a hub for change, as a hub for systemic change, and an organization that takes a holistic view on our food systems and trying to connect all the stakeholders in the picture and connect all the dots so we can all work together. So we really regard ourselves as a hub for change in the
Mm.
food systems. And that is very, very important today, because if you still take the siloed approach, I don't think it's going to work. And also, one other thing I think we have experimented and luckily that have come up with some successes is that we're not just looking at the new technologies. New technologies are very important, but we're also taking a cultural approach. At the end of the day, food is deeply, deeply connected with your culture, with your identity, right? And if you in America, if you open the refrigerator, you will know whether this person is a recent immigrant, because that's one of the hardest things to change. So food is deeply connected with your cultural identity. So we think, especially in a country like China, which has hundreds of years of food traditions, um, we are so proud of the food, the Chinese cuisine, and we're so proud that how food actually made who we are in many different levels of that term. So we have to, when it comes to change, we have to take a cultural approach as well. It can't just be a technology, technical change. Um, so I think um, for future, to shape a better future and to think about a better relationship to food, we have to work on cultures and try to bring uh, a new cultural paradigm shift in the way we produce and consume food, either in China or in the rest of the world.
Yeah. I am really appreciating all through this conversation that we're having the spirit of it, the kind of the principle that I feel you hold, which is to help people connect to deeply connect more to themselves through food, help them connect to their culture through food, help them connect to their well-being through food. So food becomes a real avenue for sort of a deeper expression, of being human. And I appreciate that that mindset, which is very different than um, cr- thinking about a food system as one size fits all. That what's going to fit here will fit here will fit here around the world. And as you're saying, that won't work. That we really have to appreciate the people and the culture, and who they are and where they are.
Right.
So yeah, thank you for that. I'm
Mm.
wondering if there's anything else that you would want this group. Remember, this is the Wellness Moonshot audience. They are all incredibly committed wellness leaders in educational systems, in organizations, in small businesses, as parents, as chefs, all over, as doctors, as nurses, and all over the world. I think at this point, the Moonshot is touching about 4,600 organizations and I think about 158 million people. So it's pretty remarkable. Is there anything else that you would want this group to hear or to know from you that you think you want to leave them with?
Yeah, well, first of all, congratulations. This is amazing network that you're having, and I believe with this amazing network, you're gonna uh, do a lot of good things to the world. So congratulations, and feel really privileged to be able to be in this program. I think if there's one last some last words I would like to leave with the audience is that uh, please support people in the forefront of food systems because we are at the dawn of major change in our food systems. So not just Good Food found in China, they might be, I believe there are many activists or pioneers in other parts of the world who are doing really great work, but might not necessarily have enough support or attention.
Hmm.
So please, pay attention uh, to the change makers around you,
Hmm.
and give them whatever support you can. And this means a lot to us, and this means a lot to future generations.
That is wonderful, and it kind of cycles. It's a spiral back to our topic, which is begin, which is, you're talking about you are among a group of people that really are like at the bow of the ship, that are breaking new waves, that are creating a new path forward that other people can follow, and any way that this community can support those change makers around the world is really critical.
Yeah,
So thank you
totally.
for your time. I have enjoyed this conversation so much, and I really appreciate all the good work you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you. And congratulations again to your amazing work.
Thank you.